Sponsored by Stand Up to All Hate. Call a timeout against hate.
Folks in Indiana are happy, not with me, but with the selection committee, because right now they're still in the field. It looks like they'll be in the field for the first college football playoff. But the folks at Miami, not particularly happy. Yesterday, the new college football playoff standings came out, and Miami was the first team out. Jim Phillips is the commissioner of the ACC. He had this to say in a written statement. Miami has more wins and fewer losses than any other team directly ahead of them, and a dominant victory over an SEC team whose late-season surge included a win over number 13 Ole Miss. Moreover, a team with 2 losses combined by 9 points. To ranked team like Syracuse and Georgia Tech, they just took a Georgia Tech team that took number 5 Georgia to 8 overtimes. Miami absolutely deserves better from the committee. That from Dan Radovich. He tweeted this in his reaction. Okay, can I make do you guys mind, Buyer? Can I make a counterpoint?
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Here's the thing. I don't like, and this is not just about sports. Actually, I think Jay Stu, you'll love this because you love talking about politics. So do I. Probably too much. We're not on the same end of the political spectrum. I'm not opposite you. I'm much more, as I've told people, in the middle, as opposed to, I think you're actually more in the middle than you lead out to believe. You just hate the fringes, especially one of the fringes. If you're going to make the argument that, hey, we beat Florida, first game of the season, they smoked Florida. Jim Phillips did what politicians always do, right? What do politicians always do? They curiously omit things that don't work in their favor, right? Okay, here's one curious omission. Yes, Florida did have a huge late season surge. They did so with a different quarterback than the one who played week 1 of the season. Okay. Additionally, if we're going with the, hey, we only lost by a handful of points to Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Here's the counterpoint. Should have lost to Virginia Tech. Should have lost to Cal. There was one other game, like 3 in a row. It was an absolute miracle that they beat Virginia Tech, that they beat Cal, and there's one other game that was an absolute escape. But commissioners don't want to say that. Look, we've been paying attention. And here's the thing, okay? I think Miami, I have less problem with Miami being in as opposed to SMU if SMU loses Saturday, or Indiana even. And my logic is this. I believe that the SEC is far and away the best league, and that any historical data you want to give me, which, by the way, also proves the SEC is the best league, isn't even appropriate because this is a new era. You can legally buy players, and the SEC has spent more money than anybody else, and it doesn't always work out to be a better team, but it is a much better, much more talented league, much more difficult week to week to win in the SEC than in any other league. And I'm an alum of the Big 12. I'm a huge Big 12 fan. Of course, we live in Big 10 country. Okay, I've lived in Pac-10, Pac-12 country forever. Okay, this has nothing to do with, I don't get paid by any of these conferences. I'm not trying to see the downfall of a league. I'm just telling you the reality, especially now that I'm in college basketball. You know why? Last night, there was the SEC-ACC Challenge, correct? Or it's part of a 2-night deal. There were 10 games. How many did the ACC? The ACC is as vaunted a basketball league as there has ever been. Think about this. In the ACC, Duke and Carolina, they play tonight, didn't play last night, in fairness. Virginia, they played tonight, they didn't play last night. Okay. Duke, Carolina, Virginia, all national champions in recent years. Okay. They have Louisville, they have Syracuse. Like, in terms of name recognition college basketball programs, they're amazing. Last night there were 10 games. The SEC won 9 of them. The only loss was Kentucky, obviously the biggest name in the SEC basketball. They lost on the road to Clemson. Okay, where road games, that happens, especially when there's a disproportionate number of fouls. The point is that the SEC has and uses more money on their players than any other conference. It's absolutely inarguable. You'll have a one-off. Ohio State football, for example, most people believe their budget's around $20 million, which is tops in all of college football. Maybe not the top. It's one of the tops. And it doesn't mean that Ohio State's a perfect team. Matter of fact, in 2 of their biggest tests, they failed. But the point is that it creates a greater depth of talent and a likelihood of success that you just don't have when you're dealing with $1 million, $2 million, $5 million payroll. It's just the reality of it. They have better players because they spend more money. Go figure. Right? It's like buying a car. Is every $100,000 car better than every $30,000 car? No, you can get a lemon. But by and large, better materials, better build quality, better likelihood of a better vehicle. That's the reality to it. And I get that Miami's like, hey, we're Miami. First of all, you haven't been relevant in years. So let's not act like your name but also, I would say that Miami gets the Miami pass because people want Miami to be relevant because Miami was so good for so long. I mean, honestly, if Jim Phillips is honest with himself, SMU having only one loss is a bad look for the league. It shows how bad the league is. Historically, Virginia Tech is awesome. Historically, Miami is awesome. Historically, Florida State is awesome. Florida State won 1 game this year. Virginia Tech, it's been a while since they've been up off the mat, and this is the best Miami has been in a decade. And you lost 2 of your last 3 games to teams that aren't in the playoffs. And you could say, well, they're good teams. Great, you didn't beat them. And who did you beat? Great, you beat a Florida team. That's not in the discussion. It's not one of the top 7 or 8 teams in the SEC. And by the way, a Florida team that changed quarterbacks since Miami smoked them to start the year. My thing was, and has always been, I think the SEC is the best league. I think if it's even close, I mean, Ole Miss has got better players. I think Alabama belongs in, and I'm interested to see what happens if is Boise State really going to be a top 4 seed? Like, what are we actually doing? Is Indiana really going to be in the field when they have 0 victories over anybody in the field, and all of their wins are against the bottom of the Big Ten? So. Byron, what do you think, bud?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think that the comments from Jim Phillips were expected. I thought that the comments from Ward Manuel were pretty glaring when he said that the teams that aren't playing this weekend have no more data points for them to change their resume. And
that's actually not true, by the way. And let me help you out. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to lose my train of thought if I do. Okay, so if South Carolina, who I believe belongs in the field, if Clemson beats SMU and Clemson is the ACC champion and Clemson then goes to the college football playoff, that's absolutely a data point. He's wrong. He's 100% wrong. 100%. They just beat Clemson at Clemson by 3 points.
I agree with you. I'm the one that's not in power, though, and neither are you. And that's
I know, but again, I was stunned that there wasn't a follow-up question. Ward, respectfully, what about Clemson? If Clemson beats SMU, doesn't that change the data points for South Carolina?
I thought, and the reason why that comment stood up for a lot of reasons, and one that you plainly laid out there, and yeah, he's exactly right. It would enhance the resume of a team like South Carolina if those dominoes fell that way, or that domino fell that way. What I do find interesting with his comment, though, and looking at the bracket compared to what it was a week ago, all last week, Doug, was I complained about, is the committee setting up these rankings for rankings purposes, or are they setting up the rankings to have the correct bracket? And I felt that they were just ranking teams for ranking teams. And now, when you look at the bracket that was released this week, what college football fan wouldn't want to see those 4 games that they have in the first round of the playoffs? And even their fallback would be like, let's say Penn State beats Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Now you've got, an Oregon possibly against an Arizona State squad. Like, these matchups are so salivating for the viewer that I feel that's where they went as a committee. That this meeting was like, all right, we're going to fill out a bracket. It's no longer about rankings. What's the best bracket that we could get? And I feel that that's what they laid out. And I think that's why he said what he said, because he doesn't want to adjust Ohio State or Tennessee or Indiana or like those schools because of the place that they are. Notre Dame. That's why I think he put those matchups, or this group put the matchups, because this is how they wanted the bracket to look.
Sponsored by Stand Up to All Hate. Call a timeout against hate.